What's doing, everybody? Welcome to First Class Fatherhood. I'm Alec, and before I hit you with today's interview, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the link in the description so you can listen to all of the interviews I've done with so many tremendous dads, including Dana White, Deion Sanders, Tony Hawk, and so many others. Now let's get going with today's interview. Joining me now, First Class Father, Dean Toole. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Hey, how you doing?
All right, let's start right here. How many kids do you have and how old are they?
3 kids, 10, 8, and 2. 2 daughters and a boy.
Wow, very cool. What type of sports or activities are they into?
One of my daughters plays basketball. My other daughter, she dances. And then my 2-year-old, I'm sure he'll enter the combat sports world, wrestling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, boxing, that sort of thing. So.
Yeah, very cool. Do you get involved with coaching at all with the basketball and stuff, or you enjoy that stuff from the sideline?
Well, what she originally started, they didn't have enough kids to play basketball at her school. So she goes to this private school, and they didn't have enough kids on the team, so she just kind of did it for fun. And now we're in like our 3rd season, and she's actually getting pretty good at it. So I stay away from the coaching. I don't want to be one of those people, but I let her do her thing.
All right, good stuff. All right, Dean, if you could, just please take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Well, my name's Dean Toole. I'm the CEO of a fight promotion called Island Fights. We're on UFC FightPass. We promote boxing as well as mixed martial arts. Our new UFC FightPass deal is predominantly mixed martial arts. We've promoted everything from Roy Jones Jr.'s fights to putting some of the top regional and people in the country onto like the Dana White Contender Series as well as into the UFC. So we have, I think, our 11th person now fighting in the UFC from our organization. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, Dean. And you've put a tremendous amount of work into it, and it shows. It's paying off now for you big time. About how old were you when you became a dad, and how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
It'll definitely slow you down, that's for sure. So I was always one that was I've been an entrepreneur since about 2007. So anybody in the entrepreneur lifestyle, it's you're just trying to make it, whether that be a new business, a business that's been consistently running for years or whatever that may be, an idea guy that likes to try new things, and hopefully those will take off and be something successful. So starting a company almost 10 years ago when my daughter was born it was difficult in the beginning, but being an entrepreneur, you have a little more time to be a dad. Your hours are a lot more flexible. You still put in a lot of hours at work, but they're definitely flexible to make stuff work. So when I originally started Island Fights, I had owned a gym, and it was like a 2-story, 8,000 square foot, weights, boxing, jiu-jitsu, MMA, wrestling, the whole 9. And she was born at the time, so that's how we started doing the fights, was to put on amateur events to keep money rolling through the gym. But I'd had my daughter like in the mornings until like 1 o'clock, and then I'd go to the gym from 1 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night. So it worked out. So
yeah, very cool.
It just went on from there. But that's how the fight started, was basically to put money back into our gym, and never thought it was going to be anything like this. And then it blew up like crazy. So.
Yeah, it blew up for sure. And what about, listen, I know you have an extensive wrestling background yourself, and you're around the fight game almost your entire life here, but what type of disciplinarian are you when it comes to being a dad? Are you a spanker, timeout guy? How do you kind of handle discipline?
I've never hit my kids once. I think I've kind of went the opposite route of when I was growing up, but I just kind of let them do their thing. They're really, really good kids. They both make straight A's, AB honor roll every single time. They're like the sweetest little girls in the world. My son's not in school yet, so we don't know how that'll work out, but they're amazing. I don't have any issues whatsoever. And, they're the reason why we breathe every day. So it's a good situation. And we grew up wrestling. My dad was a big time wrestler. I wasn't anything near him or my brother, but grew up wrestling. My brother grew up wrestling, went on a lot further with it than I did. And my dad wrestled for the Scottish national team. He wrestled for the United States Navy team. He was he would have been an alternate for the Olympics if he didn't have like this terrible weight cut and he had to wrestle at heavyweight. But he won like the Highland Games in Scotland almost 9 years in a row. So big time wrestling family for sure.
Incredible. Yeah. And you know what, Dean, the MMA, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in itself has really skyrocketed, especially in the United States. I mean, I know that it's kind of taken over. It's definitely seems to be doing better than boxing is doing at the moment here. What kind of advice do you have for the parent out there whose kid is looking at seriously getting into either the MMA or a boxing career? What kind of advice could you give that parent?
Well, I wouldn't. What I tell all of them is like, you don't really got to get them into MMA. Just get them into jiu-jitsu, right? Get them into wrestling and then get them into boxing. They don't have to do it all at once. Just take a couple classes of each every week, and then let it develop over time, So I think a lot of people try to just do MMA, but I think they should just focus on getting great at jiu-jitsu, focus on getting great at wrestling, focus on getting great at boxing, great footwork, great defense, all of those things, and then eventually it'll all tie itself together.
Yeah, well said. And I asked Dana White this when I had him on the show here. I'm sure you'll be similar in your answer, but do you notice, I know it's a big difference for guys once they become a father. Do you notice a difference in fighters once they become a dad as opposed to the guys out there that are the single fighters and don't have any kids?
There's so many different scenarios with that question. One, they don't really fight anymore. Two, they make every single thing in their power to make it, to be successful because of their children. There's so much. It takes so much time when you have a child. If you have a newborn baby or if you have a toddler under 2 or 3 years old, like you don't get much sleep. They're running around. They start walking, crawling. You don't have time to do nothing but watch your kid. You can't check your phone. You can't do nothing. And once they start walking or going from crawling to walking, forget taking phone calls, any of that stuff. And if you're a fight promoter like myself, my phone does not stop ringing from 6 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock in the morning. People on the West Coast are calling me. People on the East Coast are calling me. So it's crazy. My phone never stops. So not being able to answer your phone is hard to do when you're in the fight promotion business. So the fighters, I've just seen so many different things happen. I've seen where it's kind of made them, some people maybe just stop the grind of trying to become this UFC fighter, make it to the UFC and maybe slow down, maybe go get a regular job. I've seen so many different scenarios with it. So, but my situation is different. Like Dana's situation, he has guys that are in the UFC that have kids. These guys are probably getting paid a little more money. They're probably in a different situation. They're obviously super talented to make it to the UFC. It's the best of the best of the best are in the UFC. So on my level, it's different. It's guys that are trying to get there or might not ever get there. So the scenarios are two different scenarios. So So that's why I've seen so many different things. I've seen people quit and not fight anymore. I've seen people do everything in their power to make it, and I've seen people there's just a bunch of different scenarios. But if I was in Dana's position and those guys have kids, much different situation, I'm sure.
Yeah. And you know what, Dean? Well, one of the best things about the fight game for me, it's a great bonding moment for a father and son, I think. I grew up watching, I couldn't wait for the Friday night fights or even Tuesday night fights when they used to be on USC back in the day. That used to be something that I enjoyed doing with my father and sitting there and watching the fights. Yeah. What are you seeing as far as the interest in MMA, in what you're doing here with the Island fights? What is the demographic, the age, as far as the biggest viewership that you're seeing?
Well, what's nuts is people never believe it, but one day we have a huge arena here called the Pensacola Bay Center, and they were pulling statistics and data from the people who were buying tickets to our events, and they were so excited for some reason they wanted to come to my office and read off these sheets, and we were at 52% females are buying tickets to these events. So we have our events are different. We do VIP tables on the floor. So we've had anywhere from 70 VIP tables all the way up to 127 VIP tables, 10 people tables. So every fight I sell 8 to 12 tables that are nothing but female, the whole entire table. So I think our event is different. It's kind of like it's VIP. You got everybody there from the Usos, the WWE Tag Team Champions, to NFL players, NBA stars, all the UFC people come to our fights. So it's the who's who normally at these events, and everybody dresses up. The girls are in cocktail dresses. It's like fight night from, back in the day, fight night. So
yeah, that's awesome.
It's a big event.
Yeah, let me rein this back into you as a father here, Dean. I know as a dad, we're all struggling. All dads are kind of struggling with the technology right now that's going on. We're all competing against it. We're all using it, so it's hard to lead by example. How are you kind of handling or managing the technology with your girls at this point? Do they swiping screens already? How's that working out?
Yeah, iPads all the time. But a lot of people hate that stuff. But to me, like, those kids are so smart. They're like every kid, not just my kids. Like, these kids they'll teach you how to use a new phone or a new item. And it's just insane how smart and, editing videos. Now they have TikTok, the app that all the little kids are going crazy on. And it's crazy how talented these little kids can be on apps like that, and yeah, they're dangerous with other people. I always check whatever accounts they're on, make sure they're not being followed by any kind of weirdos or anything like that. But yeah, they get on there, they watch YouTube videos. I mean, they communicate with their friends, they FaceTime their friends. And I mean, that's how kids communicate. It's different, a lot more different than when we were growing up, when your parents let you go outside and whistled real loud for you to come back in. And it's not like that anymore. I'd rather them be inside doing that than outside not knowing where they're at. Like when I grew up, I'm, riding my bike 3 miles away from my house growing up. Like at, 8 years old, just thinking I couldn't let my kids walk down the street now, like, without being supervised. It's just a crazy world out there. So
it is, and especially too, sometimes I'll hear from non-parents and they'll say, "Oh, I would never let my kid use the iPhone or the iPad." And it's like, better, like once you have it. And you know what though, like you said, there's so many good things about the technology and the creation skills and all the stuff that it can create for them. And if we do just keep an eye on those nut jobs that are out there, that seems to be like almost impossible to keep them away from this stuff. But just look at this. This has given me the opportunity to speak to you and so many other people. So it's like just the capabilities we have.
I watched an interview. I don't know if you watch any of the Gary Vee stuff. And someone asked him a question about, do you think kids are going to grow up differently these days by being glued to their phones and their iPads and all these things? He's like, no. He's like, that's the way they communicate. We communicated with people differently when we were in the 80s or the 90s. It's just a different world. Like that, they're still communicating. They're still having, maybe, I think 4 or 5 years ago, before FaceTime was a big thing, I think it was kind of an issue. People weren't really communicating. But now, if you notice anybody 25 years old or under, they don't talk on the phone. They FaceTime when they speak. Every single one of them, So the world's changing, and that's just how they communicate. So if anything, you should encourage it. Maybe not all day long, and they should not have a life, but definitely have your kids be active and involved with different things. But as long as they're involved in different things, sports or whatever they want to do, I mean, they want to get on an iPad, watch YouTube, whatever, cool.
Yeah, well said. And I see it. I drive Uber on the weekends, and I see it all the time. Whenever the young guys are in the car, they're always FaceTiming. Like you said, there's no more like just phone calls straight up like that.
Yeah, and I used to get uncomfortable. I'm like, I know a lot of influencers like Supreme Patty and different people like that. He actually did a boxing match for us this year on an amateur event. We had Masvidal and Pettis grapple each other, like a pay-per-view thing we did. And him and his friends, when they called me, they would FaceTime me, and I was like, what the heck? I'm like, I can't answer this FaceTime. I'm in a restaurant. But that's just how they communicate, And I'm starting to do it a lot more myself. It's weird, but it's just starting to get normal, I guess.
Yeah, and one of the things that's cool too, especially like I have a lot of military dads on the show here, and it's great for them guys because they're away so much, and they have the ability now to do that. And before it used to be like a Skype with a terrible connection on a laptop. Yep. Now they can do it from their phones, and they have so much more access to speak with their families, and I think it's great for that.
100%.
Yeah. What about as far as your girls? Do you bring them to the events yet? Are they interested at all in what you're doing? Do they come to see the fights?
They love coming to the fights, our fights. They don't really care about other fights or watching on TV. They'll watch mine on UFC FightPass, and just so they could see me on the video screen or whatever. But they like coming to my events when they're local. Like my nephew, Devin Cushion, that's their cousin, so they're like a big fan of his. He's a 9-0 pro boxer, so every time he fights, they'll come out and they'll sit ringside. And one of them loves it a lot more. She'll sit ringside. The other one's will stay in the back. So.
Now, I know it's become very popular. Like you just said, a lot of females are interested in watching, but it's growing amongst female competitors too. How would you feel as a dad if your daughters were interested in pursuing a career in the combat sports themselves?
Whatever they want to do. If that's something that they wanted to do, I'd fully support it. Whatever they want to do, basketball, baseball, if they wanted to play football, I'd be cool with that. Like, I'm not going to ever force anything on any of them. Just whatever they want to do. If they want to try it, they want to play soccer, they want to dance, they want to play basketball, whatever. Like, I think all kids should be encouraged to try something and see if they like it. It's good for their health, and it's good just to learn those things, just for the development growing up later into a person, being on a team or even an individual sport like wrestling and different things like that teach you. So anything they want to do, I'm cool with that.
Yeah, very well said. And you've been crushing it here. It's been a long time in the making. You're having a lot of success now with the Island Fights. What type of plans or goals do you have for yourself for the future?
I don't really have a bunch of plans for myself. I always tell everybody it's kind of weird, but as long as we're cranking people to the UFC, like cranking out great fights, all I care about is the fights are good and we're using our opportunity to give these people a platform and make it to the next level. And 100% that's the UFC. And last year we sent just last season we sent 8 people to the Dana White Contender Series. 6 people went to the UFC from our show last year. It's not really us. Those people still have to win, so those people winning got them to the next level. But, as long as I can keep doing events, keep cranking fighters into the UFC, that's all I care about, man. Those people, if they go there and they're successful and they can make a living doing that, that's really that's my goal, is for any of these athletes to go make a living doing it. In Pensacola, Florida, we do them in different places. Alabama, we do them in Georgia, we do them in different places now. But before, all you had here was soccer, baseball, football. Like, your avenue to make it as a pro athlete, there wasn't an option for combat sports. Now we've given people another outlet where they can turn pro. They can compete as an amateur, turn professional in something, and actually make a living doing that. So one of my good friends, Dylan Kleckler, was one of our heavyweights that fought for us for a long time. And he just signed last week to Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Signed a great deal, like a life-changing deal for him. So just stuff like that happening for people that I'm friends with makes everything we do worth it.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, it's incredible the amount of opportunity available to all of these guys that's out there, and it's great to see this thing continue to expand and grow. Last thing I want to hit you with here, Dean, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for the new dad or for that about-to-be father who's out there listening? I
tell them all the same thing. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done in your entire life. And if you have 2, it's going to be even harder. It's next to impossible if they're within a couple years. So, and I always mess with them. My friend Dave Van Auken, he has a podcast called Fight Bananas. He just had twin girls, and he already had 2 kids. So he is feeling it right now. Lack of sleep, the whole 9. So the same thing I told him. I said, man, it's going to be so hard, like just messing with him. But it's not bad. Once you get midway from when they're 3 years old and over, it becomes the funnest thing ever. So I love hanging out with my girls and love hanging out with my son. I can't wait till he's 5 or 6 years old and he'll want to come to the fights and sit ringside and watch all that stuff and start competing, whatever he wants to do. But it'll be fun to be able to do that stuff with him.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. This has been an honor for me. I got to say, Dean Toole, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time on First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.